You're listening to Rouge Radio, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's time to get the point as Rouge Radio is ready to kick off.
Ready!
The best football talk with the best in the business.
So what is the cost? You have 2 first-round picks this year because the Arbuckle were dumb enough to trade for Drew Willie.
A few rookies.
We go directly to the on-field product. We welcome to the show the 20th overall pick in this past Sunday's CFL draft, DeAndre Wright of the Alouettes. DeAndre, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
And the occasional Hall of Famer.
Please welcome Doug Brown, who is one of the members of the current class of 2016 in the CFL Hall of Fame. Doug, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, guys, for the kind words and for having me on the program.
Rouge Radio is on the air. Here's your hosts, Robert Dalton and Tony Allen.
We are back for another edition of the Rouge Radio podcast, powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. This is episode 442. Again, we say that this is powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. And we've got a change of locations for myself, but Tony's back home. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually see his homage to his family. And then there's his kids. His family of Jeff Garcia jerseys. Yeah. Tony, how's it going?
Pretty good. I've got to honor the loved ones and my children. So, and you are in a closet to avoid your loved ones from showing up.
I'm not at home. So this is different. I don't have the kids with me. I don't have to stiff arm a 6-year-old. So that's going to be new. Although eventually when she does watch this on YouTube, because she is a highly addictive YouTube watcher, she's probably going to be like, Dad, I don't like how you dissed me on YouTube. What gives? By the way, I had to laugh because, you have kids. I don't know if your kids ever watched Dora.
No.
We were just waiting for the countdown. Anyway, Dora is, obviously as a Teletoon or a Treehouse character. She asked the viewer at home a question, and she just sits there staring at the viewer, just waiting for an answer. I always say it's like, what's worse, the fact that you answer Dora, or you just like either answer her or you just sit there looking at her and she's looking at the TV. So as we're waiting for the countdown, because this is never before, like we're just looking at the camera, so it's like two football guys just staring at each other, like we're watching Dora. How's life? You were up north. You had the family visit you for a bit, so that was good.
Yeah, well, Lethbridge is south. I did go up north a couple of weekends ago to Edmonton. Lethbridge is down south, at least the area I'm working in, and yeah, they came down. My rotation ended on the Sunday, so the kids came out and the wife, and we explored southern Alberta a little bit. There is 2 historical sites. I don't know if you'd really call them tourist traps because they're historical sites and they're a big part of Alberta's history. One is the head smashed in buffalo jump. And it's basically what it sounds like. That's how our First Nations in this area used to do their buffalo hunt. Every season, I believe was, I don't want to get my history wrong, but basically it was a time to collect the hides. And I'll tell you, First Nations, you just read their story. They had it right. They knew how to live. They knew how to respect everyone in their tribe, in their group. Everyone, although had a place, was all about respect. No animal carcass ever got wasted. A great story. And they would basically herd the buffalo to the edge of a cliff till they fell over, and just bodies upon bodies of buffalo laying on the bottom. And it's interesting history there. And then the second place we went in, if you want to look this up, there was a rock slide in the Rocky Mountains in southern Alberta called the Frank Slide, a small town called Frank, named after Henry Frank, a mining company owner. And there was just devastating collapse of a mountain. And it just, you can't even grasp the destruction until you get there. And this happened in 1903, and there's still no vegetation on the side of the mountain. The rocks are still strewn all over. Look it up, have some pics. If you ever want to travel Alberta, if you listen to this podcast in Alberta, need some travel, the Frank Slide. It's not a whole day event. There's a little interpretive center. This is my little history moment ramble, but I did want to bring them up because they're great parts of Alberta history that if you're ever in the area and you're traveling Southern Alberta, 2 stops you should make on a lot of amazing places that Alberta has to offer for travel.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, a lot of info if you pull it up on Google. That is just you know what, I just want to go to Alberta just for that. I mean, your kids are young. Do they get the concept of this? I mean, this is kind of.
I think they understand because they do run a little mock movie of what happened that day, and of course they can see it, so they can see the magnitude of destruction that happened in this small community, and it's it's quite the story. Like I said, look it up on the internet if you're just interested on what the Frank slide was and what happened. And the worst thing is you sit there in the interpretive center and they show you this documentary with scientists talking about how they monitor the mountain, Turtle Mountain, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
And how they've been monitoring constantly, and that they actually predict, because everything's still unstable after 100 years, that the next collapse could come in 100 years or tomorrow. So you're just sitting there thinking, let's get in the car and leave. Let's just, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's just go, because I don't want to be here if it's right now. But they have early warning systems. But again, just some, if you're interested, I suggest just look up the Frank slide in Alberta, and it'll just blow your mind when and even the pictures don't do it justice when you stand there amongst the destruction and the debris that's still there 120 years later. It's unbelievable.
It's a terrible segue, but speaking of slides, the slide of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. We'll talk more about that in depth in a couple of minutes. Before we get to Global Rouge, we had a big game. We don't put it on the itinerary. Just any thoughts of the game of the week, the BC Lions? Nathan Work still looked good, and they lose it. Like the team got blown up by lost, what was it, 21, 22 points. But you look at Nathan, the interceptions notwithstanding, Nathan Work's stats look like that BC should have won the game. Any thoughts on that one? Because
I thought it lived, for the most part, it did live up. Like we did see some good football out of the BC Lions. Obviously, Winnipeg made the statement they wanted to make. Like they needed a statement game like that, and to do it against a BC Lions club where somehow Winnipeg had to. Who would have thought at the beginning of the season that Winnipeg would have to prove themselves against the BC Lions? Like I would have believed you said, listen, the Bombers need a show me game. I would have said it was against the BC Lions, but Winnipeg, they finally showed us who they were, because BC still was a good competition from Winnipeg. Like Winnipeg didn't, I won't say Winnipeg needed to run up the score, but they needed the points. They couldn't take their foot off the gas, because BC, for whatever the turnovers or whatever, looked like they were not giving up, and Winnipeg needed to keep putting points on. That wasn't a run up the score to be disrespectful. It's like, if you take your foot off the gas, it looks like BC, you couldn't take the chance that BC wasn't going to come back and score another 20 points in that fourth quarter. So it was like, it was a very fun game, despite the lopsided score. I think they still put on a pretty entertaining football game.
Well, we'll talk more about it when we do our Week 6 preview. One thing I just want to ask is, it seems that you mentioned that you didn't think that that Winnipeg would be, this would have to be a show me kind of a game, but it just seems because of their lack of domination, BC came out of the gate 3-0, and it's like everybody was talking about Nathan Work, everybody was talking about the BC Lions, everybody kind of forgot about Colaris and the Bombers, even though that they were 4-0. This is a game saying, hey, don't forget about us. Now we're coming up another week. I don't think anybody's really pumping up the tires of the Calgary Stampeders as much as they should. I mean, it's like all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we forgot about Winnipeg. Great. Now we remember Winnipeg. Crap. Did we forget about the Calgary Stampeders?
I think we did, because we don't see them as the same Calgary Stampeders of 2-3 years ago. So this Stampeders has been missing. So for a big game, I didn't see that coming at all. Like I just didn't see Calgary's that team anymore. So I think we have forgotten the Stampeders, but in that case for a good reason, because they're not the Stampeders that they have been that we know. So they have, but it's understandable.
Before we get moving on, let's get to Global Rouge 2.0. I guess it's not 2.0. By the way, if you're listening in, and we haven't done this as well, if you're watching, you can see the ticker, the link, https://bit.ly/Rouge Radio/ or -BetUS, promo code JOIN125. It's our affiliates with betus.com. They will match your first deposit up to 125%. So, and again, we stress, Tony and I will stress, gamble responsibly. We will not be held accountable if you win. Actually, if you win a lot, then please give us money. We need it. Let's get to Global Rouge. So we talk about our listeners of the Rouge Radio podcast. Let's get the drum beat. You can hear that. All right, top countries. We got Canada, the United States, Australia, France, Switzerland, Bermuda, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Philippines, and Spain. We got a lot of European love somewhere, between France, Switzerland, and Spain. I love it. Top cities listening to the Rouge Radio podcast. We got Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, Lethbridge. Thank you, Tony, for listening from Lethbridge, Ottawa, Victoria, Surrey, St. Albert, and Toronto, Ontario. The center of the universe is listening to our podcast. I was going to mention it because I forgot to mention about it on last week's show, but now's the good time to remember because I just saw it pop up on my mentions. The Canadian Football Podcast Networks, we have a fantasy league. Last week and the week before, I, representing the Rouge Radio podcast, come up victorious. Huge domination last week against Joe Pritchard from the Rouge White and Blue podcast. And then I come back and beat the Argo Fancast with the out of nowhere showing of Dalton Schoen. And whenever I share something like a first or last name of a player in the CFL, I like to probably mention it a little bit more. And good that it's a member of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Dalton Schoen come up with 100 yards plus 2 touchdowns and key first downs. Pushed me over the edge as I beat the Argo Fancast. This week, I believe I'm facing Trey Colbeck from the Canadian Football Countdown podcast, so this will be a good way. But I'm 3-2 after starting off 1-2. I'm doing you proud, Tony.
Good
you proud.
Good to hear.
There we go. Let's get to our 3 down hot takes. This is going to be sponsored by cgiant.ca. Enter the promo code Rouge at cgiant.ca for discounts on sporting events or any kind of tickets in your area. The first one on the docket here is obviously everybody's talking about this. I know we're late to the party because of when we're recording, but we got to talk about this. Garrett Marino suspended for 4 games. Chronologically, let's go through this chronologically, shall we? Chronologically, this starts Thursday night when the Ottawa Redblacks were at the Keg. So I don't know if the Keg is in the United States. If you're listening in the United States, tell me if they have the Keg. It's basically a steakhouse, a high-end steakhouse. Not bad food, but I guess if you're making the coin that the CFL players are, I guess you can afford to go to the Keg more than Joe Blow. Anyway,
the Mushroom Neptune, love it. Love the Mushroom Neptune. From the Keg.
Can't have mushrooms. I can't have mushrooms. So the word of the story is, according to Nate Bahar, receiver for the Ottawa Redblacks, is Garrett Marino saw them, went over to their table, and started talking trash. Now, of all things, this seems to be the least noteworthy item that happened without this whole situation. However, Friday, it kind of escalated. So first off, what happened is offensive lineman Dino Boyd from the Ottawa Redblacks had a tourist hit. We might talk about that in a bit because I still think it's a suspendable offense, but again, more on that. Hits Pete Robertson on a tourist hit, takes him out, cheap shot, and Pete Robertson now out for 4 to 5 weeks. Garrett Marino doesn't like it. I wouldn't either. The next play, Garrett Marino takes out Dino Boyd, goes directly to his knees. You think, okay, that's payback. You got him. You got him back. Okay. A few plays later, Jeremiah Mazzoli tosses the ball. I don't even know if it was a first down or not. Garrett Marino goes to below the knees, takes him out there. And not only that, I think what was the most sickest part of this is Garrett Marino twists his knees as he's going down, clearly intent to injure. And then the prick, as he's walking off, is flexing, celebrating like he did something. And then he's cheering with the fans. Now, before we get on this, I want everybody to be clear on this, because you're going to see a lot of things on social media. You're going to see a lot of things on Twitter. Let's not paint the whole Rider fan with this brush that they're terrible, because I know how easy it is. 100% of the fans that are defending Garrett Marino are Rider fans. Okay? Don't see any non-Rider fans defending the hit. But that's just a vocal minority, because 99.998% of all Rider fans want this guy thrown out of the league. And that's a fact. Will he? No, but he got handed a 4-game suspension. So now that we have all this, and on top of that, he's throwing out racial slurs. It's like, I know that seems like piling on, but he's just adding incident after incident after incident. So the CFL, everybody knew. Milt Stegall even said that, it was a gutless thing. CFL has no choice but to throw the book at him. And they threw 4 games at him, which is a CFL kind of record for on-field activity. 2 games for the hit on Mazzoli, 1 game for the hit on Dino Boyd, and then 1 game for the racist comments. Before we get into the after effects, Tony, your thoughts on everything that I just described for you.
I don't know. The whole incident is horrible, and it's hard to collect your thoughts, because there's different things in play here that you want to comment on or need to comment on. And like you said, we need to start separating parties on top of it. The fans that defend it, the fans that stand up against it. There's going to be fans that support it because they have that bro flake attitude of protect the game, the image and toughness of sport at all cost. You've got to look at the suspensions itself. How do you hand out suspensions? Is 1 game in football more than 1 game in hockey, or the overall impact of suspending a player for multiple weeks in a season that only has 21 games in the whole season? The conduct of the player, to me, though, is what makes it the most sickening. That a clear lack of respect, a player who clearly doesn't play with respect if he takes it off of the field. It's one thing when emotion carries over during the game. It speaks a lot about a person's character if he's going to get in your face off the field at a restaurant. To me, that's an indicator of a personality flaw, and red flags everywhere. And the actions on the field seem to I don't believe any apology that would come from him. I don't believe any excuse. I don't believe the heat of the moment, passion. People say football is an emotional game and played with emotions, but I don't think this is a guy that got caught up in emotions, except his own aggressive personality. He's not a victim of a heightened moment. It doesn't seem, when you hear about what this guy is willing to say to another player, use racial slurs. Never in my life, at 45 years on this earth, have I ever been angry enough at another human being to take a shot at their race. I think that is the laziest, most cowardly thing to do, is try and say that you got caught up in a moment enough to use a racial slur. I've never been so mad that I've used derogatory terms towards someone's sexuality, to their race, to their gender, to their age. Like, that's just a horrible person that feels that that's part of their repertoire. And I understand too that there's going to be people, well, Tony, you've never played the game. It's different in that culture. Then that culture is toxic.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when people say with hockey too, that's locker room talk. That's hockey culture. Well, then hockey culture is in fact rotten. And if that is football culture, where that is built in, ingrained into somebody, that eventually that's a road you will go down, then your culture is poisoned. Then the football, the CFL culture is poisoned with that kind of mentality. And again, it goes back to conversations we had at the beginning with Simone Loris. Oh, it's happened fast. You don't understand. He didn't know that Mazzoli was actually hurt. I don't know how, from what I saw on that play, you could think everything was okay with Jeremiah Masoli at the end of it. I think this is a man without character, without judgment, without remorse, and I don't think he's capable of it. And it doesn't seem like he deserves the respect of just of suspensions from a game. This is a man that doesn't respect anything but himself and what he does. And I don't think he has respect for his teammates. I don't think he did it out of competitiveness or heightened emotion. I think this just sounds like someone with shitty values and a personality. I think even giving him the respect of suspensions and a chance to return is kind of an insult to Jeremiah Masoli, the game, Canada, the fans, all of it.
I said on Twitter when it happened the day after, or the night that it happened, right after the game, I said, you know what? I could give the benefit of the doubt sometimes. Take everything isolated by itself. Okay. So we went low on Mazzoli. Okay. All right. Clearly it's an intent to injure, but okay. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe the push that happened was enough to propel him lower than what he wanted to do. I don't think so now that we know, but okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And then he celebrates knowing that Mazzoli is down. You can't say the heat of the game for that. You really can't. And then people say, well, okay, well, you just mentioned it. You obviously never played competitive sports. This isn't professional level, but I remember when I was 14, 13 playing hockey, I nailed a guy. I just absolutely creamed him in a body check. I saw him, he was down. I started bawling. And I was like, hey, I went up to the referee. I don't want to say bawling, but I was like freaking worried. Like something like I did affected someone. And I went up to the ref and it's like, hey, listen, did he land something? Did I hit him wrong? It's like something I did do like wrong. Like, nope, clean hit. He just went down. You just nailed him. It's like, oh, after the game, I couldn't get to the coaches fast enough to say, hey, listen, how's that guy doing? He was fine. But I could not play. I could not to know. I know. Like I said, that's minor hockey compared to professional football. It's different. But to know that there was no empathy, there was no sympathy, there was nothing. He had all the makings of a sociopath, almost. All that. And then and then what happened? Like, here's the thing. Also, and I can't think of a name in the past that we kept on doing this for, but what happens when you start you don't condemn things to certain people? They take that as encouragement. Okay, well, you didn't tell me that it was bad. You didn't tell me not to do it again. When I come back, I might do it again. And I think that's what whataboutism is. It's take that was clearly like the word of the day Saturday, because everybody was saying, well, what about this? What about that? It had nothing to do with it. Everybody's pointing out to Simone Lawrence for something that he did in 2019. What about that? That has nothing to do with it. Simone Lawrence didn't take out Pete Robertson. Dino Boyd did. and Marino got him back. And then Jeremiah Mazzoli did not deserve any of this at all. If you could convince me that Jeremiah Mazzoli went out on a tourist hit and hit Pete Robertson, well, first off, I got to get my eyes checked for that. But you can't, because it never happened. This is a douche play by a douche individual in Garrett Marino. And then, like I said, I was going off, I started rambling. Then you have his teammates going off posting videos. Well, we're going to have to start doing things about all the dirty hits. Okay, I agree with you. Dirty hits happen in the game. It shouldn't. I agree. They should be fined, suspended, based on everything. I don't see any of those dirty hits, intent to injure. I don't see those dirty hits followed up with celebrating an injury. I don't see all those dirty hits followed up with racial comments. It's not the same. Stop doing that, because you're excusing this deplorable behavior out of this one guy. And then Coach Dickinson goes on Twitter, first off, and then he says he apologizes, and he posts his thread, and then he deletes one tweet as if that's going to do anything, because he left the rest of the thread. Like, does he not know how social media, like, somewhere in Saskatchewan, like, from the moment that they did not pull Garrett Marino after that first hit, the Saskatchewan Roughriders need a crash course in PR. The moment that they left him in the game, they were in a lose-lose situation, because now they've got to come up and say, well, we got to take him out, or like we failed Jeremiah Mazzoli. Okay, great. Now what does that do? And then you have people who work for the organization, or people who work for the radio station to give her the right, saying, well, he's not racist because he has a black friend. They had that excuse.
Oh yeah, the grace, I can't be racist because I have a black friend, kind of.
Yeah, because
that's brutal.
Lord knows there's only 2 races in the entire freaking world. Like does people ever heard of Japan and China, Philippines? There's more than 2 races. Jeez. That's the end of I really don't want to talk too much about this, because, and what I hate more about this is Saskatchewan freaking kicked ass that game. Like, I've never seen this Saskatchewan Roughriders offense, defense, like, just mesh together. Like, that was like from the kickoff, minus a couple of drives, from the kickoff to the end of until this happened. Saskatchewan was running on all cylinders. And then they're gonna have a PR nightmare trying to rebound from this.
Yeah. Like, I understand the image of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and fans will want to defend their reputation. But even when Craig Dickinson is, I mean, who are we? What if you get judged on your worst day?
Oh,
I was like, okay, this isn't a thing where I forgot to bring my tools to work. This isn't a thing where I accidentally deleted that email you needed me to forward to the customer. This isn't me forgetting to return. This isn't Marino's worst day. This is Mazzoli's worst day. This is stupidity. Like, this is just genuine stupidity. And Dickinson, just, you're already in a hole, and that just, you dug yourself into a digger hole by trying to claim that other people were the problem for judging Marino on his worst day. Yeah. Like, it wasn't his worst day. He looked like he was having a great time being a jackwagon on national television, because if you just got ejected, you should probably say to yourself, I think I screwed up. You shouldn't be celebrating getting ejected. At some point, even if you didn't know you hurt someone, the second you said, I got ejected, all of a sudden your attitude changes to defending yourself, to asking the official why, to begging to stay, to slowly. This guy seemed to love, almost victorious in getting ejected, like he had accomplished his goal, was to get ejected for that hit. I don't know. I'm not going to blame the Saskatchewan Roughriders team. I'm not going to blame their fan base. But Saskatchewan
the fan
Roughriders
base should be the
worst.
last. The fan base should not even be like if you want to
should not be
single out
defending this organization. They are doing everything wrong right now.
Yeah, they are putting on a crash course about how not to handle PR nightmares, and they like I said, from the moment that I almost called it Craig Dickinson, the moment they left Marino in after that first hit on Dino Boyd, they were doomed. They were doomed, and now they're going into the marquee game on the Touchdown Atlantic. You go from having that game to a game of the week that's being marketed as like a possibility for a 10th team. You've got that, and nobody's talking about it because Garrett Marino's a douche, right? Or I'm sorry, a jackwagon. That, by the way, that's going to be the title of the podcast. Don't be a jackwagon. I love that. Yeah, I don't think I've heard that one. I don't know if that's an Alberta thing. It's not a Manitoba thing, I don't think.
I think I stole that from a commercial. I can't forget which one. But whatever he calls someone a jackwagon, I forget what it was. But of course, out of everything in this whole show we cover, the only thing fans are going to know is what commercial I stole jackwagon from.
Let's go to the next hot take. Kahari, we talked about this on last week's show. We're talking about, hey, which coach is going to happen, and I think you kind of talked me into Orlando Steinhauer being. I initially said Kahari Jones. You talked me into Orlando Steinhauer. Now that I think about it, Ottawa and Montreal does not make sense, or Ottawa and Hamilton do not make sense. Danny Machocha, he pulled the trigger. He fired Kahari Jones and Baron Miles from his defensive coordinator duties. Danny Machocha now taking over as head coach. Anthony Calvillo now the offensive coordinator, and Noel Thorpe goes to take over his old job that he held in Montreal for a couple of years. First off, yay or nay, Kahari Jones? I mean, the moment Danny Machocha was hired as GM, he kind of knew, the fact that they released Trevor Harris, they signed him back. It was kind of, the writing was on the wall. Was it the right writing?
I guess so. I mean, Montreal has been up and I don't know. They've been up and down. Kahari Jones, maybe he had something to do with input on Trevor Harris, but it was the wrong move and they made it. And I don't know if that's on Kahari Jones, but they're an up and down team and they're in the East. And I think you can do enough to make the postseason in the East that you don't need to pull the trigger this early in a season on the Montreal Alouettes. I know I made a case for another Eastern team, but this was the Hamilton Tiger Cats, a team that has gone to back-to-back Grey Cups, who had expectations through the roof and can't put a win together to save their lives, and actually have two incredibly embarrassing defeats on the season. I feel comfortable picking the Hamilton Tiger Cats based on their poor showing, but I don't know. Montreal haven't been good this season, but they don't look any worse maybe than they have in the past. And that second spot in the East is anybody's to take through just 5 weeks. You might have a good reason why it was clear and evident that Kahari Jones needed to go immediately. But out of the head coaches we talked about 2 weeks ago, it still doesn't seem like an obvious decision for me. But there's an account for the Montreal Alouettes owner on there. I don't know if it's his real account or just someone screwing around, but even during the broadcast, they show him. He seems a pretty animated character. So maybe he is one of those owners that gets too hands-on with his football club and wants better results immediately. So maybe it was higher up that the call came down to put pressure on the general managers and the management team to get rid of Kahari Jones. But I won't say it was 100% the wrong move, But I think Montreal is an average enough team to rebound and at least fight for a playoff spot, whether it was Kahari Jones at the helm or Danny Machocha.
No, I'm completely with you on that one. Why now? It's not like you have a built-in excuse that your franchise player in Vernon Adams is injured or what have you, or not you've got Trevor Harris, who is the backup, and whenever you've got the backup playing, it's kind of like it's not really guaranteed wins. And you've, aside from that one game, a week ago, you were in every game, and you almost beat the Toronto Argonauts had David Cote made that field goal. So you're tied for first, and you were this close away from actually having first all to yourself. So what was the need to pull the trigger? And that to me tells me that Kahari Jones was on the hot seat regardless.
Yeah,
that alone says that Danny Machocha, I don't know if Kahari Jones didn't play Trevor Harris enough, or who knows? But you can see desperation in Kahari Jones the moment that he pulled Vernon Adams when he went 2 for 4 in a quarter. That was too easy. Anything you want to add before we go on to the next one?
No, I think we covered that one quite well.
There we go. Big news, big transaction news. Nick Arbuckle, for the third straight year, finds himself traded. At the end of the 2019 season, he was traded to Ottawa from Calgary. Then he got released by Ottawa, signed on with Toronto. And then 2021, he gets traded from Toronto to Edmonton. And then, of course, over this past week, Nick Arbuckle gets traded to the Ottawa Redblacks again. After all these teams that he's played for, after all these trades, this has got to be show me time for Nick Arbuckle, is it not?
Yeah. And because we need to know what we saw from Nick Arbuckle in Calgary. I think we referenced him a couple of weeks ago in the big comeback win for Calgary several seasons ago against the BC Lions. And I mean, the future looks so bright for this guy. And he was almost the heir apparent in Calgary for a Bo Levi Mitchell, who looked like he was tailing off on his career. And could Nick Arbuckle be the next great Calgary Stampeder quarterback? And then suddenly he gets shipped out of town. And that's fine. Nick Arbuckle gets a chance to start now in Ottawa. But then suddenly something falls apart in Ottawa and he's shipped out. And then the dominoes just fall for this guy. He doesn't really ever get to play in Toronto. And now he's in Edmonton with the Elks. And all the wheels just fall off. In Edmonton, now Ottawa's desperate for a goaltender, or for a quarterback. He shows up there. Sorry, it's a big hockey day today. So it's on a little bit of hockey on the brain. But now they need a quarterback. I don't think this was so much Edmonton has given up on Nick Arbuckle. I think Ottawa is just desperate for a quarterback. So we'll see. The story of Nick Arbuckle seemed so promising and then was never given a chance. And then it seems like Edmonton wouldn't give him a chance when he was there. And then he was forced in out of necessity, when Trevor Harris proved he wasn't the guy, Nick Arbuckle didn't step up either and look very good. So, I mean, if nothing else, either a hell of a tragedy story in a quarterback who looked so promising when we first saw him, to his fall from grace, or we witness one of the greatest comebacks in CFL history of someone who is down and out and found his place in Ottawa. So the story does not look good. The Nick Arbuckle story does not look like it's going to be on Disney Plus anytime soon, but we'll see if Ottawa is where his career turns around.
I could see it now. Nick Arbuckle, don't be a jackwagon.
Yeah,
quarterback. It was funny because you mentioned his time in Calgary. I almost forgot that he was in Calgary, and I almost forgot he was successful in Calgary. 12 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in I don't know, quick math. I mean, that spans over his time, I guess his short appearance in 2018 and his time subbing in for Bo. Then his time in Toronto, 5 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. His time this year in Edmonton, 2 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Like, maybe this is like one of those Calgary things where you're awesome in Calgary, you go elsewhere and suck. I mean, I don't know. Like, maybe Nick Arbuckle's not meant to be a starting quarterback in the CFL. Gotta love the guy. You gotta love his effort to get in there. I just, we talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's like, is Nick Arbuckle to blame for the Edmonton Elks? I don't think so, but he's definitely not the answer that they need. And obviously they felt similar trading him out to Ottawa. So that'll end it for this week. First off, do you have your magnificent bastard?
I do. I have a magnificent bastard.
You get it, and because is it Nathan Rourke? It can't be Nathan Rourke.
I really wanted to make it Nathan Rourke again, but Winnipeg ruined that for me. I wanted Nathan Rourke to get every magnificent bastard in 2022, but I just can't. I mean, I guess I could. It's my segment. I can do whatever I want to.
Let's get the theme already here for you, so you can think about it.
Oh my God! Number 1, Seinfeld, you magnificent bastard!
There we go.
What's the deal with Nathan Rourke? No, I just love doing my Jerry Seinfeld. But no, this time I went Homer. Not Homer the Simpsons. Homer is in Calgary Stampeder. Homer because he didn't exactly have the greatest night overall, but what an absolute backbreaker this was. A missed field goal that was returned 122 yards for a touchdown. I just felt at that point in the game the Calgary Stampeders had the dagger in there. He also added another rushing touchdown, and I think just electrified the Calgary Stampeders, and they never looked back after that one. So I want to give this to Peyton Logan of the Calgary Stampeders for your rushing touchdown and a massive missed field goal for a touchdown. Peyton Logan, you magnificent bastard.
It's going to be interesting to see how he, as well as Kadeem Carey, is going to operate against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And we'll get to the Week 6 preview. Week 6 or any kind of preview is brought to you by our good friends over at manscaped.com. Enter Rouge at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. Not only free shipping, but free worldwide shipping. Trust our partners over at manscaped.com. First game of the week is the Edmonton. You're gonna love my typo. At MTL. Let's see if I can.
Elliot Friedman type of abbreviations there.
Oh yeah, that's twice we get the hockey reference here on this podcast. Okay, where do you see this one? The Elks in fresh off. They got Taylor Cornelius starting at quarterback. I believe it's their third quarterback in 6 weeks. They're starting behind center against Montreal, who is just fresh. I mean, Danny Machocha's first game back as head coach since, I want to say, 2008, when he was the head coach of the Edmonton Elks at that time. I could be wrong on that one. I'd actually have to Google that while you go on your preview. Where do you see this one going?
Yeah, I'm going to give Montreal several benefits here. One being the home team. 2, that new coach bump, and it is Danny Machocha. So we're not talking about a head coach who is going to be trying to implement some new crazy system to make a name for himself. Danny Machocha is a good head coach, and he can put together winning football. And he's got pieces there that are all pretty decent. And as much as I don't like Trevor Harris or think he's a winner, I think he's enough than what the Edmonton Elks bring to the field. And the Elks just got absolutely crushed. And once their spirit was broken, it just got even worse for the Elks. I think I didn't tweet a lot during the game, but as the first half ended, 2 Calgary Stampeders receivers were in the same area of the field. And usually the football man tells you if you've got 2 receivers in the same area of the field, something went wrong.
Yeah.
And the Stampeders had 2 receivers on the same side of the field in the same area that could have both made a play. That's not what blew my mind so much, is that both were completely uncovered for a massive first down. And it was like, wow, that is bad football by the Edmonton Elks, that not only could you not capitalize by someone from the Stamps must have run the wrong route, or there was a miscommunication, but like, you didn't even cover either of them.
Yeah.
How did the Stamps get away with that? And not only that, they turned it in for a massive gain. And just right then, I'm like, I'm just trying to process how bad Edmonton is right now. So there's not too much to dissect for me personally from Edmonton Elks football right now. Montreal is not a great football team, but again, with that new coach bump and a little bit probably better attitudes than what's in Edmonton right now, I'm going to go 27-13 for the Alouettes.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, clearly the Edmonton Elks are still figuring out for 2023 as opposed to 2022. And I think that's just been their mantra for all year, but we've just been caught up on Chris Jones being a proven winner that we completely forgot that there's a blueprint for this as recently as 2016 when he took over the Saskatchewan Roughriders. You get all this, you got Taylor Cornelius, who for all intents and purposes has a heavy arm, which I don't know what that means, that he throws it deep. But Montreal defensively can stop that. It's just that what does Edmonton bring defensively to stop whatever Trevor Harris can bring? And regardless of our appearance of what we think about Trevor Harris, I don't think it's not much. I don't think it's any. I think we're talking about a team that's just in disarray right now, and it's had nothing to do with what happened the previous game, because I think that was just that's Calgary being Calgary and Edmonton being Edmonton, not Calgary just bringing them down to earth. That's just who they are. But I think I'm not as confident saying that the new coach is going to give him that extra bump. But I have no confidence in Edmonton at all that Montreal could just spot them 10 points, and defensively Edmonton is just not going to have enough to stop them. I think Montreal wins this one. I'll say 23-17 as a final. Friday Night Football, the game of unbeaten, and I emphasize that because the next day it's a game between 2 beaten, winless clubs. But the Calgary Stampeders in Investors Group Field, or IGF or IG Field, to play the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Because I mentioned at the top of the show, I was thinking, wait, we're all gung-ho over BC and we just forgot about Winnipeg. Now we're gung-ho about Winnipeg, but we just forgot about Calgary. So I was thinking, okay, Calgary might be the favorite. Then I started thinking, there's 4 teams in the CFL right now that are considered good competition. And that's BC, Saskatchewan, Calgary, and Winnipeg. Out of all 4 of those, Winnipeg is the only team right now that has actually beaten good competition. Winnipeg also, along with those other teams, have beaten up on teams like Ottawa, Hamilton, and Montreal, and Edmonton, as duly noted, we talked about. So I don't know if I'm that confident in Calgary coming in. Calgary's coming in, as far as I know, is I think they're waiting on Trey Roberson, but if he can't go, or no, it's Jonathan Moxley that's having injury concerns. But if he can't go, they fill him in with Raheem. To me, I think that if you're Calgary, you could just rest a bunch of pylons, and that Calgary system would put up some fantasy points for you. That's how good that system is. But Winnipeg is showing a patient offensive football that They might just kind of first down its way down the field and get a bunch of field goals. And I think this is going to be a good test for Calgary because I don't think they faced a good defense this year. Winnipeg brings that. I don't think Bo Levi Mitchell. I think the key here is how often is Bo Levi Mitchell going to be able to throw it 20 to 30 yards down the field. If he has that time, this might be over quick and for Calgary's favor. But I've got to give the home side. This goes against my jinxing. This goes against anything that I'm feeling. Zach Collaros, since in meaningful games, he's 22-1. I know I'm not a big fan of QB stats or QB wins as a stat, but that's impressive. And I think at home, coming off that emotional win against the BC Lions, I think Winnipeg wins this one. It's going to be close, but I think they win this one. I'll say 27-23, Tony.
Yeah, it is funny how the tables have turned in the past. Winnipeg needed to make a name for itself by beating Calgary, the Stampeders, every year. And now the Calgary Stampeders are in a position where if they want to prove themselves, they're the ones that need to beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers now. They are not the bar for the league anymore, the Calgary Stampeders. And it'll be interesting to see what – I don't believe in such things as game-to-game momentum. Every game is its own entity, and you're not going to carry. If you're good, you win. That's why you win, not because last game you did this or last game you did that. You just have a system, and you execute it, and you look good. And honestly, there was one touchdown by Winnipeg last weekend, and seriously, from the second the ball was snapped to the second the touchdown happened was just clinical and proof why the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are back-to-back Grey Cup champions. From the snap of the ball, the Calero scramble into the end zone, great catch for the touchdown. Like, it showed you why the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are what they are. Now the Calgary Stampeders, they were lucky enough, and the Blue Bombers both had big blowouts last weekend. Both of them feel very good. But how much trust do we have back now in Bo Levi Mitchell? In the Stampeder fan world, the social media, we really want to believe that Bo Levi Mitchell is back and that classic Bo swagger is returned and the Calgary Stampeders are back in. Now, honestly, I think the defense is progressing very quickly, much more quickly than I thought they would in Calgary. I thought this was going to be a long process that could take all season, but they are looking very, very good. They are now not so much giving up big plays at the end of the game. Now they're learning to start to bend a little bit, but not give in completely. And it'll be interesting to how fast they can turn into just, you can't do anything about them. There's still a lot of bend, still a lot of giving that defense, but I think it's improved a lot over these last couple of weeks. So it'll be interesting to see what they can offer that Winnipeg offense, because as we've seen from Ottawa and we've seen from their game against Hamilton, you can slow the Bombers down. You can throw them off their game. You can throw them off their rhythm. Let's not fool ourselves. With the exception of last week, there isn't a lot of impressive wins by either of these teams to start off, because we've talked about it. I've mentioned how Winnipeg has won, yes, but they had trouble 2 weeks back-to-back against Ottawa. The Calgary Stampeders have needed two very dramatic comeback wins for them to stay undefeated. And now, because both teams are coming off big wins, there might be the inclination to think we've got two powerhouses going up against each other. Well, they haven't been powerhouses until these last two games that we've watched, where they asserted their dominance. So it will be interesting to see what two teams show up. It will be interesting to see which teams have had their research, and it is genuinely going to be damn near close to perfect football by either club if you want to win this one. I'm not flat out giving this one to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers because they have some weaknesses. This is not the dominant Winnipeg Blue Bombers team we've seen in 2 seasons. We've seen maybe there's a few holes in that armor right now. I'm still going to give the win to Winnipeg, though, because it's my mantra for season after season after season. Until you beat the best, you can't be the best. So I will still stay a 27-21 win for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers until the Stampeders can prove they are beatable.
Yeah. And what's going to be interesting is Kadeem Carey has been just a monster going up the middle. If there is a weakness to the Bombers, it's stretching downfield, 34, that explosion play, or running up the gut. If they can make that effective, that first round production to what they have been used to, it might actually be over early in favor of the Calgary Stampeders.
And I did want to bring up Carey too. I'm glad you brought him up.
Okay, good.
Because I don't know if he's quietly, if you say he's quietly putting together a great season, or if everybody in the league is noticing he's actually having a very good season. So I'm glad you brought him up. I meant to, and then it slipped my mind.
He's second in the league rushing, 269, about 80 yards shy of the leader, Jamal Morrow. But Morrow's played one more game than Kadeem Carey. So that might change this week. However, let's get to the Touchdown Atlantic doubleheader. This one's the first one on the East Coast. My cousin is there, so say hi to him if you're there. Saskatchewan Roughriders facing off the Toronto Argonauts. Where do you see this one going?
I think this one is going to be pretty easy for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I don't want to bring up the controversy. Saskatchewan, that's different from what's on the field.
Yeah.
And the Rider team together collectively, I think, are going to be able to carry themselves quite well and keep their mind on the task. And I don't think they're coming up against a Toronto team that's got much to offer in 2022. Plain and simple, and for time purposes, because I notice we're creeping up on an hour here, I'm just going to pick 31-13 for the Riders.
I'm going to go with the Argonauts on this one. And they're considered a home team in this one. Not that it really makes a difference, but they're going to have the home field advantage by virtue of, choosing which side or what have you. I mean, that's not really going to play that much of a part. But the field, the issue here is, Saskatchewan's going to be missing two players, or the key players. I mean, they do have depth on the defensive line. They have depth on the linebacker, and they're facing they're facing a Homer McLeod Thompson. So just by that alone, you would think that this is going to be a runaway by Saskatchewan. But I think as much as a lack of effect that Andrew Harris is going to have against the Toronto D, I think the difference is going to be what Toronto's D is going to be able to do against Saskatchewan's offense. Run defense, Toronto's really good, really deceptively good. I don't have the stats to see where they stand in, and I'm going to stand correct and say that if they stand in the lower half of the teams. But based on looking at their play, they are good. Knowing how their run defense is going to me, I think their run defense is going to be enough to talk Saskatchewan out of running the football. And it's going to convince Jason Moss to call a little bit more passing plays. And I think that's going to be the downfall right there. I think their secondary in Toronto is going to be enough to force Cody Fajardo to throw away a few balls. I think that's going to be the key. And that's the reason why I'm going to pick the Toronto Argonauts to win this one. Low scoring game. I'm going to say 20-17. Last game of the week is the Battle of the Beaten, the winless Ottawa Redblacks without Jeremiah Mazzoli. I believe Caleb Evans is going to get the start facing off the Hamilton Tiger Cats with Dane Evans. I'll start off with this one because we're closing up on an hour here. I'm just going to say here, I don't like the Ottawa Redblacks in this situation. Yeah, they've got this emotion coming off there, but it's a severe, they were getting production out of Jeremiah Mazzoli. The production that you thought you would have with Jeremiah Mazzoli, which you weren't getting that much, is a severe drop off from Mazzoli to Caleb Evans. Now you've got Dane Evans and Hamilton Tiger Cats, who obviously are going to play for their coach. They hear the whispers. They see the post on social media that everybody thinks that Orlando Steinauer should be fired. They're probably going to play their hearts out. It's not going to be an ugly game. I mean, it might be ugly for a combined record of like 7-0 or 8-0 or 0-8. Sorry, might be that kind of ugly. But you're going to probably see why the Ottawa Redblacks are 0-4. And then I think this is going to be one of those things where you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, where Hamilton gets a win, and then they're going to get their head is going to be so big, it's going to be its own float or something. They're going to get that ego, and then they're going to lose like 3 in a row after that. I think Hamilton wins this one. I'll say 31-20. The home field advantage. They've got the unlikely starter of Caleb Evans. Just so many things that are working for Hamilton's favor that it's just hard not to choose the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Where do you see this one going?
I see this week 6 being my see everything's going to be fine week in Hamilton, as I laid out in the 9 teams in 9 weeks. It was going to be, it's only week 1, don't panic. It's only week 3, don't panic. It's only week 5, don't panic. The games don't matter till Labor Day. I think this is going to be the week 6. See, we told you the Tiger Cats are fine. They're going to look good against Ottawa. Unfortunately, that's an easy team to exploit. And unless, like I said, this is going to be Nick Arbuckle's Disney Plus moment if he gets in, or whoever Ottawa is putting in. I just think this is going to be essentially a gift for the Tiger Cats. They have the horses. They have the talent to beat a team in Ottawa that is right down right now. You can't get lower than the Red Blacks have it. 28 Hamilton. But again, this is the false see, I told you everything is fine week for the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
There we go. And as we wrap it up, make sure to follow us on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Rouge Radio. Myself, you can follow at Rouge Dalts. You can follow Tony, my friend, to my left, or I guess to my right. I mean, depending on how we look at it, at Tony Rouge. And of course, you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rouge Radio. And of course, you can find this content as others on YouTube. And of course, we can send us emails. Eventually, if we didn't have a jam-packed itinerary, we probably would have read a couple of emails. No. Subtly, Tony is shaking his head. Before we wrap it up, before I get to my dad joke, Tony, any final thoughts?
Yes, I'm constantly taking notes during the broadcast. That's the only thing about doing these video YouTube ones now is I'm always taking notes. So you always see me over here like this doing that. I'm just taking notes constantly because something comes up. And again, I have ADHD. I didn't take my medicine today, so I'm triply, thrice times easily distracted. So I actually got it into my head. I looked up in the corner. I saw we're on episode 442, 8 more episodes. We're at 450. 450 is a milestone. So, of course, when I'm doing notes, I'm writing down, wait a minute, episode 450 is Labor Day weekend.
Holy crap.
And to me, that's just like, there's a side. We got to work. 450 episodes, and it falls on Labor Day weekend. I feel we have like 8 weeks to convince the Canadian Football League to get us to a game and celebrate that kind of fandom. And I don't care. I don't care if I'm bragging about myself, us. That's friggin' impressive. 450 episodes of a podcast because 2 idiots love Canadian Football League that much that they devote their much time to it. So, and we've never met. This is the closest we've ever come to meeting, and it was only this season. So that's just it blows my mind. So
we tried it last year through Zoom, and then I don't know why we didn't think about this. This is like progress.
Yeah, I don't know anything about technology. Like I said, I can tell you horror stories of me and technology. We don't 100% agree all the time on how things work. But anyways, just a thought. Boy, it would be awesome to have something big and it seems like fate that it falls on Labor Day weekend too. So either way, to me, that just seemed weird to fall together like that.
the CFL should arrange for one of us to have plane tickets to go to the other city. And
Yeah.
then they should give us a $200 gift card to the keg so we can
love
see possibly someone.
And you could watch
chirping.
me eat $100 worth of mushrooms Neptune because you can't eat it. And think, where the hell is this guy putting it all?
All right. Ready for a dad joke?
Yep.
All right. Let's get to this weekend. What has more letters than the alphabet?
What?
The post office.
Groan sound effect.
There we go. Okay, finally. For Jeff Garcia fandom, Tony, my name is Dalts. We will see you next week, and we will, again, see you, like, literally on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we will see you and talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.